When considering what is true, one must also carefully examine the sources of the claimed truth. In the case of Einstein's truth of the bending of light and Darwin's truth of evolution by natural selection, the sources of these truths were two independent scientists with a passion for the collection of knowledge. They were not supported by any industry nor any social influence. Because of this and their collective body of other works, the source of these two great truths is very reliable. Also, the credibility of these two sources is increased by the repeated, independent verification of both of their truths over the years. Many other scientists have verified these truths. This community of scientists is an authoritative group and one that is extremely competitively self-policing. Being open in communicating findings and competitive in establishing the validity of ideas is one of the most powerful systems behind modern science and in complete contrast to other schemes of establishing truth. Systems of establishing truth that are fixed and based on dogma typically have very poor sources behind their claims. For example, Muslims believe that Islam is the complete and universal version of a primordial truth that was revealed many times before via prophets including Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. But these claimed sources of their truths are primarily revealed to us by the very scriptures that cite these same sources. To say this is a circular reference is an understatement. The chains of evidence that Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad existed beyond the pages of these scriptures is very slim. As for the text they claim is the source of their truth, the Quran, Muslims consider it to be both the unaltered and the final revelation of their God. It is fixed, unchangeable, unverifiable, and dogmatic. A truth worthy of an elevated position on our truth scale has a reliable source and contains the three essential elements of all dependable truths: observability, repeatability, and measurement. If a truth consists of these elements, it often has the added ability to make accurate predictions about our universe. These elements of a highly probable truth can be referred to as its chain of evidence. Like all strong chains, each link must be unbroken and secure. If one is weak, the chain is very likely to break, leaving the claimed truth stranded at the foggy end of our truth scale. The application of the scientific method or performing double-blind experiments might not be practical to every truth we analyze in daily life. However, before we consider a claimed truth's validity, we must look at its sources and the motives driving the source. We should also try and introduce logic, skepticism, and scientific curiosity to our assessment of claimed truths. Consideration of a claimed truth's feasibility and usefulness will also help us better position truths on our truth scale. Sigmund Freud presented the idea that most of our mental life, including most of our emotional life, is unconscious at any given moment. Only a small component is conscious. Given this base nature of the human mind, in the following story I would like to introduce two concepts. The first is that we humans are driven by our emotions first and our reason second. It is this fact alone that accounts for most of the unclear thinking and foggy truths that exist in the world today. The importance of emotions to our decision-making and therefore reason was tested a few years ago. Antonio Damasio, professor of neuroscience at the University of Southern California and an adjunct professor at the Slake Institute, made a groundbreaking discovery. He studied people with damage in the part of their brain where emotions are generated. He found that they seemed normal except that they were unable to feel emotions, and they all had one thing in common. None of them could make decisions. They could logically describe what they should be doing, yet they found it very difficult to make even simple decisions. For example, they could not decide what to eat. Many decisions have pros and cons, such as, shall I have the chicken or the turkey? With their emotions disabled and no clear, rational way to decide, these test subjects were unable to arrive at a decision. Clearly, emotions are a critical part in our ability to make decisions. In fact, in evolutionary terms, one can see that emotional decisions give us the advantage. They allow us to make fast decisions. These decisions may not be well-reasoned, but sometimes faster is better than well-reasoned, especially when you're about to be eaten by a lion. The second point I wish to highlight in the following story is that well-reasoned truths must contain all three elements of our chains of evidence: observation, repeatability, and measurement. Can a story alone be truth? We humans have developed many ways to communicate ideas. One of the oldest forms is storytelling. Way before we could write, we could speak, and we soon learned to use this ability to create stories. Human stories have so often led to claims of truth, but can a truth be based on a story alone? The crocodile story. If a man saw his brother taken by a crocodile at a river, he would no doubt remember this event. The man's emotions would be driven to bursting after witnessing such an event. The death of his brother would be indelibly imprinted on his mind. We can all relate to this. Later in the man's life, when he became a father and he wished to convince his daughter not to go too close to the same river for fear of a crocodile eating her, he might try and tell her directly about the tragic event he had witnessed years ago. Children being children, the father's initial story of the tragic event might not be impactful enough to ensure she did not go near the river. If this direct method did not impress the girl, he might resort to embellishing the story. Soon his story becomes a tale about a terrible monster that lives in the river. He would no doubt discover that his new fable was more effective if he exaggerated it and overstated the threat. The crocodile might become gigantic. It could take on hypnotic powers. Its claws and teeth might grow longer, and its speed of motion become supernatural. If he could impress the girl with the new and embellished story, he would be sure she would not suffer the fate of his brother. This is in fact all the father cares about. What is the truth here? It is that there is a potential of attack on the girl by a crocodile. The father knows this threat to be true as he saw his brother taken by a crocodile with his own eyes. For a thing to be a reliable truth, it must have a solid chain of evidence that supports it. This chain of evidence consists of three things: observability, repeatability, and measurement. As well as these three essential elements, it is important to gauge the reliability of the source of a truth. The girl's father is an authoritative source from the girl's perspective. The father in our example has also established one of the three elements that support a reliable truth. He observed, his brother taken by a crocodile at the river. So his truth is almost true because his truth consists of direct observation. Is this right? No, not really. It is at this point that we must consider how emotions are involved in our story. The father cares little about empirical evidence to support his truth. To him, his observation and his emotional shock is all he needs to support his perceived truth that the river is infested with man-eating crocodiles. But what is the truth here about this river? Consider during the years since his brother's death, as the girl grew, have there been other attacks at the river? If the father had witnessed other attacks over the years, then his truth would have taken on the second element of a probable truth, repeatability. Now for his truth to reach up to the levels of a very reliable truth, our story father would need to count the instances of crocodile attacks at the river over the years. This would add our third element of a substantial truth, measurement. With all three elements in place, his truth might even take on predictive powers. But this proposed truth does not contain all three elements and therefore falls far short of being true. It has to remain just a story and must be placed at the foggy end of our truth scale. And what of the embellished abilities of the crocodile in his story? This is one of the dangers of elevating stories to the level of truths. The result of the father's story is that these imaginings have been firmly imprinted on the girl's mind. Two things have happened to the girl because of her father's story. She now holds as truth that crocodiles live in the river and that these crocodiles have supernatural abilities. But without establishing all the elements of a reliable truth, we cannot know the truth about crocodiles in this river. When Albert Einstein first revealed his claimed truth that light bends under the influence of gravity, he used mathematics to prove his truth. But even with mathematical proof, scientists of the time found his idea preposterous. It was not until much later, when experiments conducted during total eclipse of the sun verified his mathematical prediction, did scientists begin to realize Einstein's truth was indeed true. When the experiment was repeated many times with the same result, the truth of Einstein's prediction, bending of light due to gravitational effects, was established. At first, Einstein provided only measurable evidence of his truth, but without observation and finally repeatability, even this great truth was considered false. Remember that one of the definitions of truth is that which is true or in accordance with fact or reality. But what is reality? Should reality be based on stories alone?